She walked into her ex-boyfriend's wedding wearing a red dress and a broken heart, ready to be humiliated in front of 300 people. What she didn't know was that the most dangerous man in the city had come to that same wedding for one reason: to find her. And when his lips met hers in front of the groom, the bride, and every whispering mouth in that ballroom, it wasn't a rescue. It was a declaration of war. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments so I know how far Lena's story has traveled tonight. Hit that like button and stay with me until the very end, because what happens next will change everything. The envelope had been sitting on Lena Hart's kitchen counter for 11 days. She'd walked past it that morning with her coffee. Walked past it again at lunch while reheating leftover pasta she didn't really want. She'd even wiped crumbs off it once without opening it, like it was just another piece of mail, like it wasn't the thing slowly eating a hole through her week. Heavy cream paper, gold foil around the edges. Her name written in that looping calligraphy that rich people paid good money for. The return address didn't say his name, of course. It said Blackwood Estate, Ridgefield, because Celeste Blackwood, the bride, didn't need to put her fiancé's name on anything. Everyone in the city already knew who she'd landed: Marcus Dalton, Lena's Marcus. Or at least he had been, for 4 years and 2 months of her life, until he wasn't. She finally picked up the envelope on a Tuesday night, sitting on the edge of her bathtub in a robe that had seen better decades, and slid her thumb under the flap. The card inside was thicker than most people's diplomas. Mr. and Mrs. Charles Blackwood request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Celeste Elizabeth, to Marcus James Dalton. She stopped reading. She didn't need the rest. The date, the venue, the name of the hotel that probably cost more per night than her rent. He invited me, Lena said out loud to nobody. Her voice sounded thin in the tiled bathroom. He actually invited me. She laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was that short, sharp kind of noise a person makes when the world does something so absurd, the only thing left is to acknowledge the absurdity. Then she set the card down on the edge of the sink, stared at her own face in the mirror, and said, Don't you dare." She went anyway. Her best friend Marin thought she was losing her mind. "You are not going to this wedding," Marin said 3 weeks later, sitting cross-legged on Lena's bed, with a glass of wine balanced on her knee. "I'm not even saying this as your friend. I'm saying this as a person with functioning eyes and a pulse. I'm going. Lena, I said I'm going." Marin watched her pull a dress out of the closet, a deep red one, with a neckline that meant business and a back that meant pay attention, and held up her hand like a stop sign. Okay, let's slow down. Let's talk about this. What exactly do you think is going to happen at this wedding? Nothing is going to happen. Then why go? Lena held the dress up against her body and looked in the mirror. The woman staring back at her was 29 years old, had dark hair that she'd been growing out since the breakup because Marcus had once said he liked it short, and had the kind of tired under her eyes that concealer couldn't fully hide. She looked like a woman who hadn't slept well in a long time. "Because," she said quietly, "if I don't go, for the rest of my life he's going to think I couldn't handle it. He's going to think that anyway. Then let him think it while I'm standing in the same room." Marin sighed and took a long sip of wine. "You know he sent you that invitation on purpose." "I know. Like strategically on purpose. Like he and Celeste sat at their little rich people table and made a list of everyone they wanted to watch suffer." "I know, Marin. And you're still going." Lena turned away from the mirror. "I'm still going." She didn't tell Marin the rest of it. She didn't tell her that Marcus had called her, drunk, 6 months after leaving her, and said he missed her, that she hadn't picked up, but she'd listened to the voicemail 40 or 50 times before finally deleting it. She didn't tell Marin that part of her, the part that she was ashamed of, the part she couldn't quite kill no matter how many times she tried. Still believed he might look at her across that ballroom and realize he'd made the worst mistake of his life. That part of her needed to be killed. She had decided that. The wedding was going to be the funeral. The venue was a converted estate about an hour outside the city, the Ashford. Lena had looked it up the night before and closed the browser after seeing the first photo. Gardens, a ballroom with chandeliers older than her grandmother, a driveway lined with white roses on the day of events. It was the kind of place Marcus had always talked about. He'd never said he wanted to get married in a place like that with her specifically. He'd just said he wanted to get married in a place like that. She should have known looking back. She should have heard it. She took a car service because she didn't want to drive, and she didn't want to risk being the one person who had to bum a ride home. The driver, a quiet older man named Hector, kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "Wedding?" he finally asked. "Yes." "Happy one?" Lena smiled, tight. "Depends who you ask." Hector nodded like he understood perfectly and didn't ask anything else. She loved him for that. When the car pulled up to the Ashford, Lena's hands were shaking. She pressed them against the red fabric of her dress and told herself to breathe. The valet opened her door. Cold October air hit her bare shoulders. She heard the faint music from inside the building. A string quartet, of course, because Celeste Blackwood would never hire anything less. And she almost got back in the car. She didn't. She stepped out. She smoothed the dress. She walked up the stone steps in heels she'd practiced in for a week, and she lifted her chin, and she went inside. The first person she saw was Elise Marchetti. Elise had been in their friend group back when there had been a tall blonde woman with the kind of laugh that sounded rehearsed. She and Lena had never particularly liked each other, but they'd pretended well enough. "Oh my God," Elise said, her eyes going wide in that specific way that meant she was about to tell everyone she'd seen Lena Hart at Marcus's wedding. "You came." "I was invited." "No, I know, well, I wasn't sure." Clearly, Elise's smile tightened. "You look gorgeous. That dress is so bold." "Thank you." "Is someone with you?" "No." "Oh." A small sympathetic tilt of the head. "That's brave." Lena's jaw clenched, but she kept her face smooth. "Is it?" "I'm just here for the open bar." Elise laughed, too loud, the way people laugh when they're uncomfortable and want to pretend they aren't. "Well, the ceremony's starting in about 20 minutes. You should find your seat." "I will." Elise walked off. Lena watched her beeline directly to a cluster of women by the champagne table, lean in, and start talking with her hand cupped over her mouth like a child telling a secret. One of the women in the group, a redhead Lena vaguely recognized, turned to look at her, then looked away quickly. "Here we go," Lena thought. She walked to the bar. The bartender was young, maybe 23, with a nervous expression that suggested this was his first big event. She ordered a whiskey, neat, and he poured it with hands that weren't quite steady. "Long night already?" she asked. Yeah. Sorry. The mother of the bride has been—" "Say no more." He laughed, grateful, and slid the glass to her. "On the house." "You'll get in trouble. It's all open bar." "Oh, right." She smiled at him, actually smiled, the first real one since she'd gotten in the car. "Thank you." She took the drink and turned around, and that's when she saw Marcus. He was across the ballroom, already in his tux, talking to an older man she recognized as Celeste's father, the Blackwood patriarch. Charles Blackwood, who owned half a shipping empire and, according to the gossip columns, had paid for the wedding twice over because Celeste had changed her mind about the flowers at the last minute. Marcus laughed at something Charles said, and Lena's whole chest locked up. He looked good. That was the worst part. He looked good. His hair was shorter than she remembered, neater. He'd gained a little weight. The kind of weight rich men gain when they stop cooking their own dinners. His tux fit him like it had been sewn onto his body. He had a champagne glass in his hand, and he was nodding at whatever Charles was saying, and he looked, Lena thought with a sick twist in her stomach, like a man who had finally gotten everything he wanted. And then he saw her. It was brief. His eyes slid across the room, past her, snapped back, held. His smile dropped half an inch, recovered. He raised his glass to her. Just a small lift. Just enough to say, "I see you." Lena didn't raise hers back. She stared at him, flat. And then she looked away first because she had to. Because if she didn't, the tears building behind her eyes were going to fall in front of 300 people, and she would rather have died. She walked toward the garden doors. Outside, the air was cold enough to bite. The gardens had been lit with little golden bulbs strung through the hedges, and there were outdoor heaters scattered around. But Lena walked past all of it, to the far end of the stone patio, where the light was dimmer and nobody was standing. She set her glass on the low wall. She pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes. "Don't cry," she whispered. "Do not cry." "Lena?" She froze. It wasn't Marcus. The voice was wrong, too high, too careful. She turned. Celeste Blackwood was standing about 10 feet away in her wedding dress, a cloud of white tulle and lace and pearls that must have cost as much as a small house. She was holding the hem of the gown up off the stone so it wouldn't drag. Her hair was already in the intricate updo for the ceremony. Her makeup was perfect. She looked, Lena thought, like a magazine cover. "I didn't think you'd come," Celeste said. "I was invited." "I know, Celeste hesitated. "I wanted to say, before, that I hope that we're all adults here." Lena stared at her. "Did you come out here to tell me that?" "I saw you leave the room. I didn't want you to—" "To what, Celeste?" Celeste's lips parted, then closed. She was, Lena realized with some surprise, nervous. She had not expected this woman to be nervous. In every version of tonight Lena had rehearsed in her head, Celeste was smug. Celeste was triumphant. Celeste was the kind of bride who floated through the night knowing she had won. This version, pale under her makeup, fingers tight on her own dress, was not what Lena had prepared for. "I just want tonight to be about us," Celeste said finally. "Marcus and me." "It is about you," Lena said. "I'm not going to ruin your wedding, Celeste. I don't care about you enough to ruin it." Celeste flinched. "I'm here because I was invited," Lena went on, her voice very quiet, very level. "I'll drink your champagne. I'll watch you walk down the aisle. I'll clap when you kiss him. And then I will go home and I will never think about either of you again. Does that work?" Celeste swallowed. "Lena, go back inside. Your father's looking for you." He wasn't. Lena had no idea where Charles Blackwood was. But Celeste took it as the dismissal it was, and turned on her white satin heel and fled back across the patio. Her dress rustled against the stone. Lena waited until she was gone, then picked up her whiskey glass and downed the rest of it in 2 swallows. It burned. It felt good. Then she heard footsteps behind her, heavier this time, male. She closed her eyes for 1 second. "Don't be him. Don't be him. Don't—" Lena. It was him. She turned around slowly. Marcus Dalton stood on the patio about 6 feet away, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a lowball glass with something amber in it. His tie was already a little loose. The smile he'd given her across the ballroom was gone now. What was there instead was harder to name, something between regret and hunger, something that, if she'd seen it on any other face, would have meant trouble. "What are you doing out here?" she said. "Not a question. I needed air. Your wife's looking for you." "She's not my wife yet." His eyes dragged down her dress, slow, and then came back up. "You look— Don't. Incredible. Marcus, don't." He took a step closer. She didn't step back. She wouldn't give him that. But she felt every inch between them like a wire pulled tight. "I didn't think you'd come." "Everyone keeps saying that." "Celeste didn't want me to send the invitation." Lena blinked. "What?" "She said it would be—" He waved his hand vaguely. "Awkward." "Then why did you send it?" He looked at her, just looked at her. He didn't answer because he didn't have to. She could read it in his face. He had sent it because some small, cruel, possessive part of him had wanted her to see this, had wanted her to see him marry someone richer, someone prettier, someone who came with a last name that opened doors he'd only ever been able to stare at before. He had wanted her to watch. Lena felt something very deep in her chest go cold. "You're a coward, Marcus." "Lena, no, I mean it. You're a coward. You spent 4 years with me, and then you left me because a Blackwood finally looked in your direction, and now you want me to stand here in this dress and tell you I still think about you. Is that it? You want me to make you feel better about what you did?" That's exactly what it is. "Lena, His voice cracked a little. "I think about you. All the time." She stared at him. 2 minutes before his wedding. 2 minutes. And he was saying this. "Don't you dare," she breathed. "I made a mistake." "You are about to marry her." "I know." "Then go marry her." "Lena." "Marcus, if you say one more word to me, I am going to scream. I'm going to scream so loud every guest in that ballroom comes running. Do you understand me? Because I will do it. I will burn your wedding to the ground with my bare hands. Do you understand me?" He stared at her. He nodded once, jerkily. He took one step backward. He opened his mouth, closed it, turned around, and walked back toward the ballroom with his drink. She watched him go. She watched the exact moment his shoulders straightened again. His chin came up. His "I'm about to get married to a Blackwood" face slid back on like a mask. She watched it, and she hated him, and she hated that she had ever loved him. And most of all, she hated the part of herself that had wanted, for 1/2 second, to say yes. To say, "Yes, I still think about you too. Yes, I would leave with you right now." That part of her needed to die. The wedding was going to be the funeral. But she went back inside because standing out in the cold was going to make her look like she was running. She found her seat, back row, because Celeste had placed her there on purpose. And she watched the ceremony with her hands folded in her lap. Celeste walked down the aisle in that enormous dress, her father beaming, 300 guests dabbing their eyes. Marcus stood at the altar and smiled at his bride the way a man smiles when he's being photographed. They said their vows. They kissed. Everyone clapped. Lena clapped too. She clapped exactly as many times as the people next to her clapped, and she kept her face arranged in a polite, pleasant expression. And when the recessional music started and the new Mr. and Mrs. Dalton walked back down the aisle together, Lena did not look at them. She looked at her lap. And then it was the reception. The ballroom had been transformed during the ceremony. The chairs cleared away, round tables set with white roses, a head table raised on a small platform at the front. The string quartet was gone. A jazz band had taken its place. Waiters in white gloves circulated with trays of champagne. The whole room smelled like flowers and perfume and money. Lena found her table. It was in the back. Of course it was in the back. The seat card next to hers said Thomas Avery, +1. The seat across from hers said Sandra Dalton, Marcus's aunt, a woman Lena had met exactly once at a Christmas dinner and who had looked at her the whole night like she couldn't quite remember what country Lena was from. And the 2 seats to her left said vacant. Vacant. They had literally written vacant on the place cards. They hadn't even bothered to fill the table. Lena sat down slowly. She took a sip of water. She felt for the first time that night like she might actually cry. Across the ballroom, at the head table, Marcus was laughing at something his new father-in-law had said. Celeste was leaning against his shoulder, radiant. A photographer crouched in front of them, clicking away. A dozen people stood near their table, waiting for a chance to shake Marcus's hand, to congratulate the groom on his excellent marriage, to network, to be seen. Lena sat at her empty table in her red dress, and she understood, in a slow, clear, terrible way, exactly what she had been brought here to be. She had been brought here to be the lesson, to be the before and after, to sit alone at a table labeled vacant so that everyone could look and whisper and feel better about their own lives because at least they weren't her. Sandra Dalton sat down across from her. She looked Lena up and down. "Oh," she said, "you're here." "I'm here. Marcus said he'd invited you. I didn't think you'd actually come," Lena finished for her. "Well, yes. I got that a lot tonight." Sandra pressed her lips together in a small, pitying smile. "It's good of you to be so mature about this." "Is it? I'm sure it can't be easy." "Sandra?" "Yes?" "Please eat your bread." Sandra's mouth opened, then closed. She picked up her bread. The whispers started somewhere around the time the salads came out. Lena wasn't imagining it. She could feel it, the way eyes kept flicking to her table, the way conversations at nearby tables would dip in volume when a waiter passed, then resume a second later with little glances. Someone at the table behind her laughed and said, quite clearly, "That's her? I thought she'd be—" And then someone shushed them. She picked at her salad. She sipped her wine. She answered Sandra's small talk questions with one-word answers and stared at a point just above the centerpiece. "1 more hour," she told herself. "You eat dinner. You stay until the first dance. You leave. You never have to see any of these people again." That was the plan. And then she felt it. It started in the back of her neck, that specific prickle, the one people talk about, and never really understand until it happens. Like being watched. Not by a glance or a whisper, but by something steadier, something that didn't care if it was caught. She turned her head very slightly. She didn't see him at first. The ballroom was huge and crowded, and the lights were low enough that faces blurred at the edges. But then her eyes caught on a figure standing near the back entrance, alone, holding a drink he wasn't drinking. Tall, broad through the shoulders, dark suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone in a way that said he didn't care what anyone thought about his dress code. His hair was black, his jaw was sharp, and his eyes were on her. Not on the head table, not on the bride, not on the room. On her. Lena's breath caught, and she didn't know why. She didn't know him. She had never seen him before in her life. And yet something in the way he was looking at her, quiet, patient, absolute, made her feel for the first time in months like maybe she wasn't the loneliest person in this room. She turned back to her salad, her heart beating somewhere high in her throat. Don't look again, she told herself. Don't look. She looked. He was still watching her. At the head table, a man in a suit leaned down and whispered something urgent in the ear of Celeste's father. Charles Blackwood's face went through several expressions in very quick succession. Confusion, recognition, a kind of pale, startled alarm. He looked across the ballroom, following the other man's pointed gaze. His face went white. Lena saw Charles grab Marcus by the arm. She saw Marcus turn his head toward the back of the room. She saw Marcus's whole body go still. Who? Lena heard Sandra say in a changed voice. Who is that? Lena didn't answer. She couldn't, because the man at the back of the ballroom had set his drink down on a nearby table, and he was walking now. Not fast, not slow. Just walking, steady as a tide, directly across the dance floor. Guests stepped out of his way without seeming to notice they were doing it. Conversations hushed as he passed. A woman in a green dress put her hand on her husband's arm and said quite clearly, "Oh no." He was walking toward Lena. Her hand tightened on the stem of her wine glass. Who are you? She thought. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? The man stopped at her table. He didn't look at Sandra. He didn't look at the empty vacant seat cards. He didn't look at anyone in the room except her. Up close, he was worse, or better. Lena couldn't decide which. His eyes were a color she couldn't quite name in the low light. Gray, maybe, or a kind of dark blue that only looked gray when it wanted to. There was a small scar through his left eyebrow. He wasn't smiling. "Miss Hart," he said. His voice was low, rougher than she had expected. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. "Will you come with me?" he said. "I don't—" She swallowed. "I don't know you." "No," he said. "You don't. Not yet." Behind him, across the ballroom, Marcus was standing up from the head table. His face was drained of color. Charles Blackwood had a hand on his arm, holding him back, shaking his head sharply. "No, Marcus, no, don't go over there. Do you know who that is?" Lena could read the whole conversation on their faces, even from 50 feet away. The man in front of her didn't turn around. He didn't need to. He knew Marcus was watching. He knew everyone was watching. "My name is Adrian Volkov," he said, quiet, like it was only for her. "And if you stay at this table for the rest of this wedding, they are going to spend the rest of your life telling the story of the girl who sat alone at the empty seats while her ex married up." He paused. "I'm offering you a different story." Lena stared at him. Her pulse was a hammer in her throat. Somewhere very far away, she heard Sandra Dalton whisper, "Oh my, why?" Lena managed. "Why what? Why me? Why are you—" She shook her head once. "I don't understand." Something moved behind his eyes. Something she couldn't read. For a second, just 1 second, he looked less like a stranger and more like a man who had been trying to find the answer to a question for a very long time, and had just found part of it, and didn't know what to do with it yet. "I'll explain later," he said. "Stand up." She didn't know why she did it. She would think about it later. She would lie awake in the dark and think about the exact second her hand unclenched from the stem of her wine glass, the exact second her legs obeyed the soft command of a man she had never met, the exact second she pushed her chair back and stood up in her red dress in front of 300 people in Marcus Dalton's wedding. She would think about whether it was the look in his eyes or the word different, Or the fact that after a whole night of being seen as the lesson, someone had finally looked at her like she was a person. She would think about it for years. But in that moment, she didn't think. She just stood up. Adrian Volkov held out his hand. She put hers in it. His fingers closed around hers, warm and very steady, and he drew her gently out from behind the vacant cards and into the aisle between the tables. The jazz band kept playing. The waiters froze with their trays. And across the ballroom, Marcus Dalton, on his wedding night, with his new bride on one side and his new father-in-law on the other, watched a man the whole room was afraid of lead Lena Hart away from her empty seat. Adrian didn't look at Marcus. Not once. Not even a glance. He only looked at her. "Stay close to me," he said, low, only for her. And Lena, whose night had already broken her twice and wasn't finished with her yet, heard herself whisper back, "Okay." His hand was warmer than she'd expected. That was the first thing Lena noticed as Adrian Volkov led her across the ballroom. Not the whispers, not the 300 faces turning toward them, not the way the jazz band was still pretending to play while every musician on that little stage was staring at her over their instruments. Just his hand, warm, dry, steady in a way that hers wasn't. She had gone very cold the moment she stood up. Her legs moved because his did. Her heels clicked on the hardwood because the floor was hard and her shoes had heels, and those were the kinds of simple facts her brain could still hold on to. Everything else had gone fuzzy at the edges. The centerpieces on the tables blurred into smears of white and green. The candles looked like they were underwater. Somewhere to her left, a woman gasped. The kind of theatrical little sound you make when you've been waiting your whole evening for something to happen, and it finally has. "Keep walking," Adrian said, quiet, not turning his head. "I am walking." "Good." "I don't know where we're going." "I know." That was all he gave her. He didn't tell her where they were going. He didn't even tell her which direction. He just kept moving, slow and deliberate, his fingers loosely threaded through hers like they had done this before. At the head table, Marcus was still on his feet. Charles Blackwood had a hand on his arm now, not a light one. Lena could see the older man's knuckles white against the black of Marcus's tuck sleeve. Charles was leaning in, talking fast, the way a man talks when he's trying to save his own son-in-law from doing something very, very stupid. Marcus wasn't listening. Marcus was staring. Celeste was staring too. But Celeste's face had gone a different color than Marcus's. Marcus had gone pale with rage. Celeste had gone pale with recognition. She knew him. She knew him. Lena saw it. That little jolt in Celeste's shoulders, that sharp intake of breath, the way her hand shot out to grab her new husband's wrist, and she thought, in the strange floating way she was thinking about everything right now, "Well, that's interesting." "Adrian," a man's voice called from a nearby table. Adrian didn't stop. He didn't slow. He didn't even look. "Adrian, my friend." "Not tonight, Howard." The man who had called out, older, silver-haired, holding a whiskey, made a small hurt sound and sank back into his chair. Lena caught just a glimpse of his face as they passed. It wasn't offense, it was relief. Like he had been given permission not to be acknowledged. That was when Lena understood, really understood, that whatever she had just stepped into, it wasn't small. Adrian walked her to a set of tall, arched doors along the side wall of the ballroom, not the main exit to the lobby, not the garden doors she'd been out through earlier. A side corridor, narrower, more discreet. He pushed one of the doors open with his free hand and guided her through it. The second the door closed behind them, the sound changed. The jazz band dropped to a muffled hum. The voices of 300 guests became a low, indistinct murmur, like the sea heard from another room. Lena let go of his hand. She meant to do it politely. She ended up yanking it back instead, and she took 2 quick steps away from him and pressed her shoulder blades against the corridor wall. Her breath was coming short. The whiskey and the wine and the fear were all swimming together in her stomach. "Okay," she said. "Okay, stop. Stop." "Who are you?" He watched her. He didn't move toward her. He stood where he was, about 4 feet away, and folded his arms across his chest in a way that pulled the fabric of his jacket tight across his shoulders. In the dim hallway light, his eyes looked darker than they had in the ballroom, almost black. "I already told you," he said. "Adrian Volkov." "That's a name. It's not an answer." "What did you want? A resume?" I want to know why, 3 minutes ago, an entire wedding went silent because you walked across the dance floor. He studied her for a long moment. The corner of his mouth lifted very slightly. It wasn't a smile. It was closer to the acknowledgement of a good question. How much do you know about the city? He said. What? Ridgefield, the families. Who owns what? I work in marketing, Adrian. That's not an answer either. She exhaled sharply. I know the Blackwoods are rich. I know Charles Blackwood owns half the waterfront. I know Celeste's father funded Marcus's last 3 deals. I know enough to know that I am not important in any of those rooms, and you are. So why are you wasting your time on the woman who got dumped? Is that what you are? That's what tonight was supposed to prove. He was quiet. His eyes didn't leave her face. She had the uncomfortable feeling, standing in that narrow hallway with her back against the wall, that he was not really looking at the woman in front of him. He was looking at something else, something behind her face or through it, something he was trying to match against a picture he'd been carrying around for years. Why are you looking at me like that? She said, quietly. He blinked. Once. The look broke. Like what? Like you're... She shook her head. Never mind. Miss Hart. Lena. Lena. He said it carefully, like he was testing the shape of it in his mouth. I didn't come here tonight to humiliate Marcus Dalton. I don't care enough about Marcus Dalton to humiliate him. If you want to know the truth, I came here for 2 reasons, which are, one of them is business, and the other, he didn't answer that one. He just looked at her. And Lena, who had spent 4 years with Marcus Dalton learning to read the 1,000 small ways a man can lie to your face, did not know what to do with a man who simply refused to lie at all. It was worse than a lie somehow, a lie you could push against. Silence like his was a wall. I need to go home, she said. Okay. That's it? Okay. I told you I'd explain later. He tilted his head slightly toward the door they'd just come through. This is not later. When is later? Tonight. Excuse me? I'll take you home. Absolutely not. His mouth did the thing again. Not a smile. The almost smile. Lena. No, listen. You can't just walk into a wedding, pull some woman you don't know off a table labeled vacant in front of the entire room, and then tell her you're taking her home. This isn't a fairy tale. I don't even know what this is. I don't know you. You're right. She stopped. What? You're right. You don't know me. I'm a stranger. You should not leave this building with me. You should call a car, get back in it, and go home alone. He unfolded his arms. That is what a careful woman would do. Then why did you? Because, he said, a careful woman doesn't go to her ex-boyfriend's wedding in a red dress. Her mouth opened, closed. He had her. She hated that he had her. I'm going home alone, she said. All right, stop agreeing with me. You keep telling me things. I keep agreeing. I don't know what you want me to do with that. You're not. She pushed off the wall, took 2 angry little steps toward him, pointed a finger at his chest without touching it. You're not going to talk me into anything. I'm a grown woman. I make my own decisions. I came here tonight to do one thing, and that was to prove I could survive being in the same room with Marcus Dalton, and I did it, okay? I did it. I don't need to be rescued by some man with a scar and a 3-piece suit who thinks a kiss is... She stopped. A kiss, she said slowly. He didn't answer. Did you... She swallowed. Did you come in here intending to kiss me? Silence. Adrian? Yes. Yes. In front of Marcus? Especially in front of Marcus. Why? He looked at her, and for a second she saw him choose his words, actually choose them, the way careful men do. Not the first thing that came to his mouth, not the second, something further in. Because, he said, I watched him seat you at an empty table, and I watched his aunt look at you like she'd stepped in something, and I watched you sit there with your hands in your lap and count how many minutes you had to stay before you could go home. I watched you make a smaller version of yourself so you would fit in a room that wanted to break you. And I could not... He stopped, started again. I don't like men like Marcus Dalton. I don't like rooms like this one. I don't like the arrangement where a woman is made to be the lesson. That's not a reason to kiss a stranger, Adrian. No. Then what is? His jaw tightened, just slightly. I don't know yet, he said. That was the most honest thing anyone had said to her all night. Lena pressed her hand against her forehead. Her head was pounding. The whiskey from the bar and the wine from the table and the 3 sentences Marcus had said to her on the patio were all fighting for space behind her eyes. I want to go back in there, she said. Okay. I want to get my coat. Okay. And then I want to leave. Okay. By myself. He was quiet. By myself, Adrian. You said that. Say okay? Lena, say it. If you want to leave alone, you will leave alone. I'm not going to stop you. I have never in my life stopped a woman from doing anything she told me she wanted to do. Good. But I'm going to wait for you outside. Adrian. I'm not asking you to ride with me. I'm not asking you to speak to me. I'm telling you that I am going to stand on the front steps of this hotel and wait until you are in a car and that car is moving, and then I'm going to get in my own car and go. You don't have to look at me. You don't have to wave. You just have to know that you're not walking out of this building alone tonight without somebody watching to make sure you get into the right car. She stared at him. Why? She said very quietly. Because you're in a red dress, he said, in a building full of people who spent the last 3 hours whispering about you. And the only thing worse than what Marcus Dalton did to you in there would be somebody doing something to you out there. She didn't know what to say to that. She didn't know what to do with him. She pushed past him, back into the ballroom. He didn't try to stop her. He didn't try to follow. He just stood in the corridor and let her go. The ballroom, when she stepped back into it, had not recovered. The jazz band had given up any pretense of playing. A trumpet player was pretending to adjust his mute. Conversations had resumed, but they were too loud. That specific brittle loudness of people trying very hard to look like they weren't still talking about the thing they were still talking about. Lena walked back toward her vacant table on legs that felt distant, and every eye in the room tracked her. Sandra Dalton was gone. So was her bread plate. Sandra had either been summoned to do damage control at the head table or had moved somewhere she wouldn't have to share oxygen with Lena anymore. Either way, Lena didn't miss her. She picked up her clutch from the table. She turned toward the exit. Lena. She closed her eyes. She had promised herself this was the last time tonight. She had promised. She turned around. Marcus was standing about 6 feet behind her, his tux jacket open, his tie pulled even looser than before. His face was flushed. He was holding, of all things, a napkin, like he'd grabbed it off a table on his way over and didn't know what to do with it now. Lena, wait. I don't want to talk to you, Marcus. You don't understand. I understand fine. That man, he said, urgent, low. That man you just walked out of the room with. What about him? Do you know who that is? Adrian Volkov. That's a name, Lena. It was almost exactly what she had said to Adrian 5 minutes ago. She almost laughed. Yes, Marcus, I'm aware. I asked. I know what names are. Listen to me. He stepped closer. He dropped his voice even further. That man is not. He is not. You don't understand what he does, what his family does. There are things about him. Were you invited to his wedding, Marcus? What? Were you invited to his wedding in the last 5 years? Have you ever been invited anywhere Adrian Volkov was? Marcus's jaw moved. No, but that's the answer to everything you're about to tell me then, isn't it? She tilted her head. If he's so dangerous, how would you know? If he's so untouchable, how do you have dirt on him? You don't, Marcus. You have whispers. You have rumors. You have the stories rich men tell each other at bars to explain why certain men got richer than they did. Lena, I'm going home. Don't leave with him. Adrian? Yes, don't. Promise me. She looked at him. She looked at Marcus Dalton on his wedding night, in the ballroom where he had just married a Blackwood, holding a wadded napkin in his hand and asking her to promise him something about another man. Something in her that had been very tight for a very long time went loose. Marcus, she said, almost gently, you don't get to ask me for promises anymore. He opened his mouth. He didn't have anything ready. He just stood there. "Congratulations on your wedding," Lena said. "I hope she makes you happy. I really do." She didn't mean it. He knew she didn't mean it. But it was the most polite way she could think of to close the door. She turned and she walked out of the ballroom, and she did not look back. The hotel lobby, after the ballroom, felt like outer space. Quiet. Cold. Marble floors. A single concierge at the desk. A fountain burbling softly somewhere behind a pillar. Lena walked to the coat check and waited while a very young, very tired attendant dug through a long rack looking for her ticket number. The sound of her own breathing was suddenly too loud in her ears. "Here you go, ma'am." "Thank you." She put her coat on with fingers that wouldn't cooperate and tried to remember the name of the car service Hector worked for. She got her phone out. She opened the app. She stared at the little loading wheel and thought, in a disconnected way, that her hands were shaking and she didn't know when they had started. Behind her, the lobby doors opened. She didn't turn. "Miss Hart?" She closed her eyes again. "Are you really just going to stand on the steps outside, Adrian?" "That was the deal. I didn't agree to a deal." "I know. I made it anyway." She turned around. He was in his coat now. A long, dark overcoat, unbuttoned, the collar up against the October cold that had come in through the opening doors with him. He looked, in the lobby light, less like the man who had walked across the ballroom, and more like a man who had lived a number of years and kept most of what those years had done to him under his skin. He wasn't young, she realized. He wasn't old, maybe mid-30s, but there was a quality to him of having been tired for a long time. "The app isn't working," she said, irrationally, because it was easier than saying anything else. "That app doesn't work up here. There's no signal in the lobby." "Oh. I'll have the concierge call you a car." I know you can. Let him do it anyway." Adrian stepped to the concierge desk without waiting for her permission, leaned over, murmured something. The concierge, a thin man in his 40s who looked profoundly relieved to have a task that wasn't dealing with the wedding, picked up a phone immediately and started dialing. Adrian came back to her. He stood a careful distance away. Not too close, just close enough that anyone watching would know they were together and far enough that she could breathe. 3 minutes, he said. "Okay." They stood in silence. The fountain burbled. "Lena." "The man who tried to stop you just now, in the ballroom." "Marcus." "Yes." "What did he say?" "He told me not to leave with you." "Ah." "He said there were things about you." "There are." She looked at him, sharp. "Adrian, I'm not going to lie to you." He met her eyes. "There are things about me. Marcus Dalton doesn't know any of them. But there are things. I'm not a good man in the way you would want a good man to be good. I'm not going to pretend I am. I don't do business with people like Charles Blackwood because I'm kind. I do business with them because they need me more than I need them. She let out a small, startled breath. "That's the most honest thing anyone said to me all night. I noticed that about tonight." "What?" "That people weren't being honest with you." She looked at him. Something in her chest did a small, strange, sinking thing. Not fear, not quite comfort. A third thing she didn't have a word for. "Why did you really come to this wedding, Adrian?" He was quiet. "You said 2 reasons," she said. "Business and I said I'd explain later." "Is this later?" He tilted his head slightly toward the front doors of the hotel. Outside, beyond the glass, a black town car was pulling up under the awning. The car he'd asked the concierge to call for her. "No," he said. "This is goodbye." She blinked. You thought what? I thought you were—" She stopped. She didn't know how to finish that sentence without sounding ridiculous. "I thought you were going to push. I thought you were going to keep me here. I thought you'd given me a deal I hadn't agreed to, and now you were going to pretend I'd agreed to it." He watched her try to find the words and not find them. "Lena," he said, "I meant what I said in the hallway. I am not going to stop you from doing something you told me you wanted to do. You told me you wanted to go home alone. There is your car. It will take you home alone. I will stand on those steps until it drives away. That's the whole thing. That's all of it. And then what? And then I go home." And then she felt absurdly like she was going to cry. She didn't understand it. She didn't know why. And then I never see you again? He looked at her. He took one small step closer. Not enough to frighten her, just enough to be heard without raising his voice. That depends on you, he said. I'm going to give you my number, not on paper, not on a card. I'm going to say it out loud, once, and you can write it down or not write it down, and that will be the end of my part. He paused. If you call, I'll answer. If you don't, I won't find you. I'm not that kind of man. Aren't you? I'm trying not to be. Tonight. She stared at him. Her eyes were stinging. She didn't know when that had started either. He gave her the number. 10 digits, slow and clear. She didn't reach for her phone. She just listened. Later, in the car, she would sit in the back seat and type those 10 digits into a note in her phone and stare at them for the entire 40-minute drive home, trying to decide if she had actually memorized them or if she was remembering them wrong. She had memorized them. She would not be remembering them wrong. Okay, she whispered. Okay. The concierge coughed gently from his desk. Ma'am, your car is ready. Thank you. Adrian took a single step back from her. The overcoat fell straighter. He gave her a small nod. Not a bow, not a flourish, just the acknowledgement that they were done. She walked to the doors. She had her hand on the brass handle when she stopped. She turned around. Adrian. Yes. You said there were 2 reasons you came tonight. Yes. You told me the first one was business. Yes. What was the second? He looked at her for a long moment. The lobby light caught the small scar through his eyebrow, caught the gray in his eyes, caught something tired and private in his face that she had not been meant to see. I came here tonight, he said, because somebody told me a woman named Lena Hart was going to be on the guest list, and I needed to know if it was you. She went very still. If it was me, she repeated. Yes. You don't know me, Adrian. I didn't think I did. What does that mean? He was quiet. His jaw worked once. Do you remember, he said, a summer when you were 20, in Maine, a small town called Port Halden, a diner on the water? Lena's breath left her body. She did remember. Port Halden. 9 years ago. A summer she didn't talk about. A summer her mother had been dying and Lena had driven out of state and worked in a diner washing dishes for 6 weeks because she couldn't bear to be in the house another day. A summer where she had met a man she had never known the last name of, a man who had come into the diner late at night, every night for 2 weeks, and sat at the counter and ordered the same thing and talked to her quietly while she wiped down the end of the bar and listened when she cried one night at 2 a.m. about her mother and bought her breakfast on the morning she finally went home. A man who had given her a phone number on a napkin that she had lost in her suitcase on the drive back and had never been able to find again, no matter how many times she had dug through every pocket of every jacket she owned. A man she had thought about, off and on, for 9 years. A man whose face she couldn't quite remember anymore. A man who had only ever told her his first name. Her hand tightened on the brass handle. Adrian, she said. Yes. The man at the counter. Yes. That was you. I think so. He watched her face. I wasn't sure. I'd been looking for a long time. I knew your first name. I knew what state you were from. I knew you'd gone back home after that summer, and I didn't know where home was. I didn't have a last name. I didn't have a phone number. I didn't have a picture. His voice went quieter. I looked for 9 years, Lena, and then last month somebody at a dinner mentioned that Marcus Dalton's ex-girlfriend was named Lena Hart and was going to be at his wedding in October. And she was the kind of woman who would show up to something like that just to prove she could. Her eyes filled. I came here to see if it was you, he said. I came here tonight because I was told you existed, and I needed to see if you were her. And, she whispered, and you are. She couldn't speak. The concierge was studiously looking at his computer screen. The driver of the black town car outside was waiting, one hand on the open back door, the other tucked into his jacket against the cold. Adrian didn't come any closer. He didn't reach for her. He didn't touch her. He just stood in the middle of a hotel lobby in an overcoat he hadn't buttoned and looked at the woman he had spent nearly a decade trying to find and let her decide what to do with it. I don't know what to say, Lena said finally. Her voice was wet. You don't have to say anything. I don't... She swallowed. I don't remember your face. I'm sorry. I tried for years and I know. I lost the napkin. I figured. I looked for it. Okay? I never stopped looking for it, Adrian. I told myself I stopped. I didn't. He closed his eyes. For just a second. When he opened them again, something in him had settled. Lena, he said. Go home. Adrian, go home. Sleep. Don't decide anything tonight. Tonight is not a night to decide anything. You drank too much wine, and your ex-boyfriend got married, and a man you barely remember told you he spent 9 years looking for you. That is not a night for decisions. When is? Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Or the day after, or the week after, or never. He paused. I gave you the number. The rest is yours. She stared at him. She nodded once because she couldn't do anything else. She went through the doors. The cold hit her like a slap, clean and bracing, and she walked across the awning with the driver holding the door, and she slid into the warm leather back seat of the town car and pressed her hand over her mouth to keep whatever was happening in her chest from getting out. The car pulled away from the curb. She looked back, once, through the rear window. He was standing on the front steps of the hotel in the cold, hands in the pockets of his overcoat, watching the car leave. He didn't wave. He didn't move. He just watched, steady as a tide, the way he had walked across the ballroom until her car turned the corner and the hotel disappeared behind a hedge. Lena turned around in the seat. She stared at her lap. She stared at her hands in her lap. The driver, a kind-eyed woman about her mother's age, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Bad wedding? Something like that. You want the radio on, honey? No, thank you. Just quiet, please. You got it. They drove. The city came back into view through the windows, a string of lights along the freeway, the skyline beyond it dull and orange against the low sky. Lena watched it pass without seeing it. In her head, she was in a diner in Port Halden, Maine, 9 years ago, at 2 in the morning, crying over a cup of coffee she hadn't ordered, telling a stranger about her mother. In her head, she was 20 and raw, and the stranger was a man whose name she'd barely caught, whose face she couldn't picture now, whose voice she had remembered in fragments for almost a decade, the way you remember the shape of a song you once knew. I'd been looking for a long time, he'd said. I came here tonight because I was told you existed. And you are. She got out her phone. Her hands were still shaking. She opened the note where she'd typed those 10 digits. She stared at them. She didn't dial. She read them over and over. The car took her home through the dark. The car pulled up in front of her building a little before midnight. Lena tipped the driver in cash because she couldn't handle the math of an app tip with her hands still shaking, and she got out on legs that felt borrowed and walked up the 3 steps to her front door in the red dress she'd worn to a wedding she shouldn't have gone to. The streetlight outside her building had been flickering for 2 weeks. Tonight it had finally given up and gone out altogether. She unlocked the door in the dark. Her apartment smelled like the lavender candles she had lit that afternoon, back when lighting a candle had felt like an act of courage. Like she was telling the universe, I will come home from this wedding alive and my apartment will smell nice. The candle had burned all the way down. The wax had pooled around the wick and started to harden. She stood in the doorway with her coat still on and her keys in her hand, and she stared at that dead little candle for what must have been 30 seconds before she realized she was doing it. She closed the door behind her. She locked it. She slid the chain into place, then slid it back out, then slid it in again because she couldn't remember if she'd just done it. She walked to the kitchen in her heels. She took them off there, 1, 2, left them side by side on the tile. She took her coat off and draped it over the back of a chair. She unzipped the red dress halfway down her back and stopped because she didn't have the energy for the rest. Then she sat down on the kitchen floor. Not a slow sit, a drop. Her legs just folded. She landed hard on the tile, her back against the cabinets, her dress puddling around her, and she put her hands flat on her face and she made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite anything else. She stayed there for a long time. When she finally moved, it was to take her phone out of her clutch. The screen had a crack along the bottom that she'd been meaning to get fixed for 6 months. The note with Adrian's number was still open. She read the digits. She closed the note. She opened it again. She set the phone face down on the tile next to her and put her head back against the cabinet door and looked up at her kitchen ceiling. The ceiling had a water stain in the corner, shaped vaguely like a boot. She had been looking at that water stain for 3 years. She knew it the way other people knew their children's faces. It had appeared one morning after a storm and never gone away, and she had stopped asking the landlord about it after the second time he'd said he'd get someone up there. She had made peace with the boot. The boot was part of the apartment now. She stared at the boot, and she thought in no particular order, I kissed a stranger tonight. No, he kissed me. No, he did not kiss me. He was going to, and he didn't, and I made him not. And now I don't know if I wanted him to or didn't. I told Marcus he was a coward. I meant it. I meant it, and it didn't help. I sat at a table labeled vacant, and I let them do that to me. I sat there and let them. I let all of them. I let Celeste do that to me. I let Marcus's Aunt Sandra say, "Oh, you're here. Oh, you're here." Like I was something the cat dragged in. "Oh, you're here. I'm here. I was here. I wore the red dress. I drank the whiskey. I came home alive. I came home. I'm home. I'm on my kitchen floor." There was a man in a diner in Maine when I was 20, and he gave me his number on a napkin, and I lost it. I lost it. I looked for that napkin for a year. He looked for me for 9. She closed her eyes, and the tears came then. Finally, the way rain comes, sect, not dramatically, not with any shape, just steadily, into the hands she had pressed back over her face. She cried for her mother, who had died that fall she was 20, and who she still missed in small, stupid ways at 40 different times a week. She cried for Marcus, who she had loved and who had turned out to be exactly the kind of man he'd always told her he wasn't. She cried for Celeste, who had stood on a dark patio in a white dress and told her, "I hope we can all be adults here, like adulthood was a costume you put on at your own wedding." She cried for the 20-year-old girl who had sat at a diner counter in Port Halden and cried in front of a stranger, and for the 29-year-old woman who was sitting on a kitchen floor now and had apparently learned nothing in 9 years. She cried until she was empty, and then she sat there with her eyes open and her face raw, and she listened to the refrigerator hum. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it, face down on the tile, and for one ridiculous second she thought it was him. That was the kind of thought that came to her now, apparently. That was the kind of woman she was now. She flipped the phone over. "Marin." "You alive?" Marin. "Lena." "I swear to God." Marin. "If you don't answer me in 10 minutes, I am coming over." Marin. "I mean it. I'm already in my car." Lena laughed. It came out ragged. She thumbed the screen with fingers that didn't want to work right. Lena. "I'm alive. On the kitchen floor. Don't come." Marin. "The kitchen floor?" Marin. "Lena." Marin. "I'm already driving." Lena. "Marin, please." Marin. "Too late." Marin. 12 minutes. Lena dropped the phone back on the tile. She put her head back against the cabinet. She looked at the boot on the ceiling. "Okay," she said out loud, to nothing, to the boot. "Okay." She got up. It took more than one attempt. Her legs had stiffened sitting against the cabinet, and the dress was not designed for standing up off a kitchen floor in. She braced one hand on the counter and pulled herself upright and caught sight of herself in the little mirror hanging by the door, the one she'd put up so she could check her face before she left the apartment. Her eye makeup had not survived. Her lipstick was smudged on one side. Her hair had come half out of the careful knot she'd pinned it into before the wedding. Her eyes were puffy. She looked like a woman who had been through something. She looked, she thought distantly, like her mother. The buzzer from the street rang 9 minutes later. Marin had, it turned out, been closer than she'd claimed. Lena buzzed her in without speaking. She unlocked the door and went into the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face and came out again with her hair down and her mascara mostly wiped off, wearing the robe that had seen better decades and nothing underneath it. The red dress was a puddle of fabric on her bedroom floor. She had stepped over it without looking. Marin came through the door like weather. Coat, boots, a canvas bag with a bottle of wine sticking out the top, hair pulled up into a messy bun that had clearly been executed in the car at a red light. "Oh, babe," she said, the second she saw Lena's face. "I'm fine." "You are not fine." I said I'm fine. Marin set the bag down on the kitchen counter, pulled out the wine, pulled out a box of tissues she had apparently also brought, pulled out, incomprehensibly, a bag of shredded cheese. Why is there cheese? I panicked. You brought me cheese. I brought you what was in my fridge. Come here. Lena came. Marin hugged her, hard, in the middle of the kitchen, and Lena stood there with her arms loose at her sides for a second and then lifted them and hugged her back. Marin smelled like her apartment, cinnamon and dry cleaning and the leather seats of her old Volvo. She had been Lena's best friend since they were 19. She was the only person in the world Lena had ever cried in front of on purpose. Tell me everything, Marin said into her hair. Tell me everything or I'm calling Marcus Dalton's mother. You don't have her number. I will find it. Lena pulled back. She wiped her nose on the sleeve of her robe. She looked at Marin's face, the genuine, solid, no-nonsense worry of it, the way Marin's eyebrows had knit together and stayed there. And she felt, for the first time since she had walked out of the Ashford Hotel, like maybe she was going to be okay. Pour the wine, she said. Yeah. A lot of it. Yeah, I know. They sat on the couch. Lena told her everything, not in order. She couldn't do order, not yet. She told her about the invitation and the red dress and Elise Marchetti's face at the door. She told her about Sandra Dalton and the bread. She told her about the vacant seat cards, and Marin made a sound in her throat like a small animal being stepped on. She told her about Marcus on the patio. I think about you all the time. Marin put her wine glass down so hard on the coffee table, a little slopped over the side. He did not. He did. On his wedding night, 2 minutes before the aisle. Lena, I know. That is the most pathetic. Marin pressed her hand against her mouth. I hate him. I hate him so much I think it's giving me a headache. Okay, keep going. Lena kept going. She told her about the whisperers, about the way the room had changed when the man in the dark suit had started walking, about the hush that had come off him like cold air from a freezer door. She told her about his voice in her ear. I'm offering you a different story, about his hand closing around hers, about the side corridor and the wall against her back, and the things he had said, about Marcus's napkin and the ride home that hadn't happened, and the town car Adrian had called for he ate here, and then stood outside the hotel in the cold to watch leave. She told her about Port Halden. She told her about the diner. She told her, in a voice that got smaller and smaller, about the stranger at the counter 9 years ago, and the napkin she had lost and the phone number she had looked for, off and on, through 3 different apartments and 4 different boyfriends, and 1 job change, until she had convinced herself she was making up how much she cared about finding it. And she told her that the stranger from the diner and the man at the wedding were the same man. By the time she got to the end of it, Marin had gone very still. Lena. Yeah. Are you telling me? Yeah. Stop. Let me get this straight. A man you met once in a diner in Maine when you were 20, who you knew for 2 weeks, 2 weeks, has been looking for you for 9 years. That's what he said. And you believe him. Lena was quiet. She stared at the wine in her glass. The color of it, in the lamplight, looked almost black. Yeah, she said. I believe him. Why? Because she thought about it. She wanted to say it right. Because he didn't try to make me believe him. He didn't oversell it. He said what he said. He gave me his number. He told me to go home. He didn't ask me for anything. That's not how a man lies to a woman, Marin. A man lying to a woman stays closer. A man lying to a woman doesn't let you leave. Marin exhaled slowly. Okay. Also what? Also, I remember him. You said you didn't remember his face. I didn't. I don't. Not really. But I remember. Lena pressed her fingertips against her forehead. I remember the way he listened. When I told him about my mom. I remember sitting at the counter of that diner and saying these really, really awful things, these things I had not said to anyone, and he didn't fix it, Marin. He didn't try to fix it. He just listened. He asked one question, and then he listened. What did he ask? He asked what her name was. Marin's eyes filled. Oh, Lena. Yeah. Oh, babe. Yeah. And tonight He just walked into Marcus Dalton's wedding and walked you out of it and let you go. Yeah. And gave you a phone number. Yeah. Are you going to call him? Lena stared at the wine. I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Lena, the man looked for you for 9 years. You cannot. Okay. Marin set her wine glass down and held both hands up. I am going to be the responsible friend. I am going to be the responsible friend, even though every cell in my body wants you to call this man right now. Are you ready for me to be the responsible friend? No. Too bad. You just did a lot tonight. You went to your ex's wedding. You sat at a table labeled vacant. You had a conversation with his new wife in a garden. You walked out of a ballroom with a man the whole ballroom was afraid of. You got the Adrian Volkov of it all, and then you came home and sat on your kitchen floor. That is more than a human being is supposed to do in one night, okay? So you are not going to call him tonight. I'm not done. You are not going to call him tomorrow either. You're going to sleep. You're going to eat breakfast. You're going to go to work on Monday and answer your emails and sit in your dumb little meetings, and you are not going to call him. And then maybe on Wednesday or Thursday, when you are a person again, you are going to look at that phone number and you're going to decide whether you want to call it. Okay? 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 Okay, Marin. Okay. I love you. I love you too. Marin poured them both more wine. They drank it. They talked about other things. Marin's sister's new dog, which had apparently eaten a shoe. The guy Marin had been half seeing, who Marin had decided she wasn't going to keep seeing because she had caught him lying about whether he'd read a book. Lena listened and laughed in the right places and did not look at her phone, and Marin stayed on the couch until she fell asleep there around 2 a.m. with her head tipped against the arm of the couch and her mouth slightly open. Lena draped a blanket over her. She went to bed. She did not call him. In the morning, the world was the world again. A gray Sunday, the kind where the light came through the window diffuse and soft, and the whole city seemed to be sleeping in. Lena woke up to the sound of the coffee maker. Marin had gotten up first and turned it on, and she pulled her robe tighter around herself and shuffled into the kitchen to find Marin in yesterday's makeup making toast. Morning, dead woman. Morning? How do you feel? Bad? Yeah. They ate toast. They drank coffee. Marin left around 11 with a long, tight hug at the door and a command to text me if you do anything stupid, which was the most affectionate thing Marin had ever said to her. The apartment was quiet after she left. Lena cleaned. She cleaned for 2 hours, the way she always did after something hard, methodically, room by room. Not because the apartment was dirty, but because her hands needed something to do. She washed the wine glasses. She threw out the dead candle. She picked up the red dress off the bedroom floor and hung it back in the closet without looking at it, because she did not yet know what to feel about the dress. She made her bed. She wiped down the bathroom counter. She ran a load of laundry she didn't really need to run, and she did not call him. She looked at her phone maybe 30 times. She opened the note. She closed the note. She opened it again. She read the 10 digits. She closed the note. Around 3 p.m, she sat down at the little desk by the window in her bedroom. The desk she'd bought at a yard sale when she'd first moved in, and had painted white and still had a small burn mark on one corner from a candle she'd set too close to it. And she took out a legal pad and a pen. She had been a list maker once. She had gotten less organized the last few years. Tonight she felt like she needed a list. At the top of the page she wrote, "Things I know." Underneath it she wrote, 1. His name is Adrian Volkov. 2. He is rich or powerful, or both. Charles Blackwood was afraid of him. Celeste knew who he was by sight. Marcus didn't know him personally, but knew enough to be scared. 3. He was in Maine 9 years ago. 4. He knew my mother was dying. He listened when I told him. 5. He gave me his number on a napkin. I lost it. 6. He has been looking for me. 7. He doesn't lie easily. Or he lies so well that lying and not lying look the same from the outside. Either way, I cannot currently tell. She stared at the list. Then she flipped the page and wrote, at the top of the new page, "Things I don't know." And after a long moment of the pen hovering, she wrote, 1. Everything else. She looked at that for a while. Then she put the pen down, and she closed the legal pad, and she got her phone. She was not going to call him. She had agreed with Marin that she was not going to call him. She was going to do the responsible thing. She was going to wait until Wednesday or Thursday, and she was going to be a person again, and then she was going to make a careful decision. She opened her browser. She typed in his name. The first result was a short piece from a regional business journal dated 4 years ago. It was about a failed real estate acquisition somewhere downtown, where a consortium of investors had backed out at the last minute after Volkov Holdings had acquired a majority interest in the underlying property. The article did not explain who Volkov Holdings was. The article noted that Adrian Volkov declined to comment. The second result was a paywalled article she couldn't read past the first paragraph. The first paragraph mentioned a political donation to a gubernatorial campaign 2 cycles ago. Adrian Volkov, a private investor whose firm has been tied to interests across the eastern seaboard. The third result was an old society page photograph. Lena clicked it. It was a charity gala. She didn't recognize any of the faces except one, a woman in a silver dress whose name she vaguely remembered from some political scandal a few years back. And then to the side of the frame, half turned away from the camera, she saw him. Adrian. Younger in the photograph, maybe a year or 2 younger, though it was hard to tell. The caption beneath it read, Elena Markov, and at right, A. Volkov, of Volkov Holdings. Lena stared at the photograph. He was not laughing in it. He was not smiling. He was just standing at the edge of the frame, holding a glass, with the same patient stillness he had walked across the ballroom with last night. She scrolled on. There was very little else. A few trade publications mentioning a company he was connected to. A list of board memberships, most of them in shell companies and foundations with vague names. One wedding announcement from 6 years ago for a woman named Natalie Volkov, sister, cousin, whose husband was apparently some kind of maritime lawyer. For a man of his reputation, there was almost nothing about him on the internet. That, Lena thought, was probably on purpose. She closed the browser. She sat in her chair by the window and she stared at her legal pad, and she thought about what Marcus had said. You don't know what he does, what his family does. She thought about Adrian himself. There are things about me. She thought, good people don't need to warn you about themselves. She thought, bad people don't usually warn you either. She did not call him. On Monday, she went to work. She worked at a marketing firm in a glass building downtown, in an office that had never quite stopped feeling temporary to her even after 3 years. She sat at her desk and she answered her emails, and she did not tell anyone about the weekend except her office friend Priya, who she told the bare outlines of yes, I went, yes, it was awful, no, I don't want to talk about it. And Priya, who was very good at reading the room, did not push. She got through Monday. She got through Tuesday. She got through Tuesday night when she sat on her couch with a microwave dinner and scrolled through nothing on her phone and deliberately did not open the note with the number. On Wednesday, Marin called her at lunch. Have you called him? No. Are you going to? I don't know. Lena. I said I don't know, Marin. I don't know. There was a pause. Marin, to her credit, did not push either. Okay, Marin said. Okay, you don't know. That's fair. You don't know yet. Yet. I didn't mean yet. I meant yet as in, Marin. Okay, fine. Not yet. Never. Whatever you need. I love you. Eat lunch. Bye. On Thursday afternoon, Lena came home from work and there was a package at her door. It wasn't large. A flat rectangular box about the size of a laptop, wrapped in brown paper. No return address. Her name and apartment number were written on the front in a handwriting she didn't recognize. Tight, small, precise, the kind of handwriting men of a certain age had been taught in school. She stared at it on her doormat for a full minute before she picked it up. She brought it inside. She set it on the kitchen counter. She washed her hands for some reason, as if the package might be dirty. She got a pair of scissors. She cut the twine. She peeled back the brown paper. Inside was an old book, not antique, not pristine. A well-read hardback, the kind where the spine had been creased from someone actually opening it more than once. The dust jacket was a little faded. The title was The Small Boats of Port Halden, A History of a Maine Fishing Town, 1870 to 1970. Her hands started to shake. There was a slip of paper tucked into the front cover. She opened the book. She slid the paper out. It was not a long note. It was not a letter. It was 4 lines, in that same tight, careful handwriting. Lena, I found this in a used bookstore a year ago, and I didn't know why I was buying it. I know why now. No pressure, no expectation. I thought you should have it. A. That was it. There was no phone number on the note. He had already given her his number. There was no request for her to call. There was no, I'd like to see you or think about dinner or I'll be in touch. There was nothing to respond to. It was not a move. It was not a gesture. It was exactly, precisely what he had said. I thought you should have it. Lena sat down on her kitchen floor again. She was doing a lot of sitting on her kitchen floor this week. She opened the book. The first few pages were a foreword by a local historian she'd never heard of. The second chapter was about the founding of Port Halden. The fourth chapter was about a storm in 1912 that had destroyed half the fishing fleet. There were black and white photographs of men with large mustaches standing next to wooden boats. There was a fold-out map of the harbor. She flipped to the back. There was an index. There was a list of businesses, the ones that had survived and the ones that hadn't, a 2-page appendix. About halfway down the second page of the appendix, one entry was underlined. Not heavily, not with a pen. With pencil, very lightly, the way you mark a book you love. Mosby's Diner, 1954 to present. Harbor Road. Family owned. Still serving the fisherman's breakfast. Mosby's. She had forgotten the name. She had forgotten she had ever known the name. But she looked at it now, pencil underlined in a used book that had been sitting on a stranger's shelf for a year, and she was 20 years old again for 1 second, standing behind the counter in an apron, sliding a plate of eggs across the formica to a man in a dark coat who had come in at 1:45 in the morning and ordered coffee and listened to her talk about her mother. She closed the book. She got her phone. She opened the note with the 10 digits. She stared at them. She stared at them for a long time. And then, with hands that were not quite steady, but were not shaking anymore either, she tapped the digits into her phone, one after the other, and she pressed the green button, and she held the phone to her ear, and she closed her eyes. It rang twice. He picked up on the third. Lena, he said. Just her name. Quietly. Like he had been sitting by his phone for 4 days waiting to say it. She opened her mouth. She didn't know what she had been planning to say. She hadn't planned anything. She had walked into this without a plan. She had spent 9 years losing a napkin, and she had spent 3 days not calling a number, and she had nothing, not one single sentence, ready for the moment his voice said her name. So she said the only thing she had. You found the diner. There was a pause, a long one, and then on the other end of the line, very softly, like a man letting out a breath he had been holding for a long time, I found the diner. They did not say anything for a long moment after that. Lena could hear him breathing, or not breathing quite, the space where a person's breath should be, the small, soft sounds of a body on the other end of a phone line that told you it was a real person and not a machine. In the background, on his end, she could hear faint music, something orchestral, low, a string section. She wondered where he was. She wondered what the room looked like. She wondered, absurdly, if he had good lighting. Are you okay? He said finally. I don't know. That's honest. I'm in my kitchen. Okay. I'm on the floor. Ah, I'm on the floor a lot this week. I'm sorry to hear that. It's not your fault. Some of it might be. She laughed. It was a short, wet laugh that came out half through her nose. She pressed the heel of her hand into her eye. Adrian? Yes. The book? Yes. I'm not going to ask you how you got my address. That's probably wise. I'm going to ask you one thing, and I need you to answer honestly, not carefully. Honestly, do you understand the difference? I do. Okay, have you been watching me? There was a pause. It was not a long pause, as pauses go, but it was long enough. Not the way you mean, he said. Explain. I haven't had anyone following you. I haven't had anyone reading your emails. I don't have photographs of you sleeping through your curtain. Lena, I need you to understand, I'm not that. I'm not that kind of man. What kind are you? The kind who asks questions about someone at a dinner once, and then pays attention when the answers come back. I have known your last name for 4 weeks. I have known what you do for 3. I know you live alone, in an apartment with a burned-out streetlight in front of it, because I sat in a car on your street for about 20 minutes last Friday night before your wedding, and I turned around and went home. Last Friday. I know what that sounds like. Adrian, I didn't come to the door, I didn't knock. I sat at the end of the block and I looked at your window and I felt like I was 17 years old, which is not something I have felt in a long time, and I drove home. That's the worst of it. That's everything. I do not stalk the women I'm interested in. I promise you that. The women you're... She stopped. Is that what this is? He was quiet. Adrian, I'm thinking about how to answer. Take your time. Lena, his voice got quieter. I don't know what this is. I'm being honest with you. I thought you should know I existed. I thought you should know I had been trying to find you. I thought you deserved to be asked, as an adult, whether you wanted anything to do with me, instead of finding out about this some other way later. That was the whole plan. The diner book was not supposed to be a gesture. It was supposed to be a small thing, a way of saying, I know we're not strangers, that's all. It was a big gesture, Adrian. I can see that now. You don't send a woman a book from a bookstore you found her in and call it a small thing. No, you're right. I'm sorry. She pressed her palm harder against her eye. Don't apologize. I am, though. I know. Okay. Okay. Neither of them said anything for a moment. On his end, she heard the music change. A movement ending, maybe. A quiet little click, like he'd set something down on a hard surface. Where are you right now? She asked. My apartment? In Ridgefield. Yes. What does your apartment look like? He made a small, surprised sound. You want me to describe it? I'm sitting on my kitchen floor in a robe talking to a man I don't really know. Yes, Adrian, I want you to describe it. He thought about it. It's smaller than people expect. Of you. Of me. What else? There's a lot of books. How many? I don't know, maybe 2,000. 2,000 books. I don't read all of them. I'm not claiming to read them. Most of them were my father's. She blinked. Your father's. He died when I was 26. He collected books. He had nowhere to put them at the end, so they came to me. I've never been able to get rid of them. I have a whole room. I converted it. I don't use it for anything except the books. I'm picturing a library with a ladder. There's a ladder. Oh my, Adrian, I'm aware of how it sounds. You have a ladder in your library? I'm a very cliched person in some ways. She laughed, for real this time, a small, wet laugh that was half into her hand. She heard him laugh too, just a little. The first time she'd heard him laugh at all. It was a dry, low sound, almost embarrassed. What else is in the apartment? She said. A kitchen that doesn't get used enough. I have one of those. A couch that I bought when I was 29 and haven't replaced. Same. A record player. Of course. It's not an affectation. I grew up... Adrian, I'm teasing you. Oh, I'm teasing you. Okay. Who's on the record player right now? Brahms. I knew it was classical. I don't know Brahms. Do you want to? Maybe. He was quiet for a second. She heard him stand up. She heard him walk. She heard the soft, muffled sound of him doing something with a turntable. A gentle lift, a careful placement, and then the music came again, slightly louder, clearer this time, through the phone. It was the violins. A slow movement. She could hear a single melody line rising above the rest of it, patient, a little sad. She closed her eyes. She sat on her kitchen floor in her robe, and she listened to Brahms through a phone line with a man she had lost for 9 years, and she didn't say anything, and he didn't either, and for almost 2 minutes the only thing that existed between them was the music. When the movement ended, he lifted the needle. Thank you, she said. Her voice had gone thin. You're welcome. Adrian? Yes. I want to meet. Okay. Not tonight. I'm not ready tonight. I'm not going to get off the floor and do my hair and meet a man at a restaurant tonight. I'm not doing that. I wasn't going to ask. But soon. Whenever you want. Saturday. Saturday works. Saturday afternoon, daylight, a public place, somewhere easy, somewhere I can leave if I need to. Yes. There's a coffee place on Marine Street, near the park. Do you know it? I can find it. 1 o'clock. I'll be there. Don't. She took a breath. Don't send anything else between now and then, please. Don't send flowers. Don't send another book. Don't pay for my coffee in advance. Don't do anything. I won't. I mean it. I know you mean it. I won't. Okay. Okay. Adrian? Yes. I'm going to hang up now. I don't know how to end this phone call. Hang up. Okay. Lena. Yes. I'm glad you called. She didn't say anything. She couldn't. She hung up. She sat on her kitchen floor and looked at the phone in her hand, and she pressed her lips together until the tremor in them stopped. Then she got up, put on actual pants under her robe, made herself an egg, and watched 2 hours of a cooking show she had seen before. She did not open the book again. The book sat on her kitchen counter where she had left it, with the note tucked back into the front cover, and every time she passed it, she looked at it sideways, the way you look at an animal you are not sure is tame. She went to bed at 11. She did not sleep well. Saturday was 3 days away, and every day between the phone call and Saturday felt like its own small ordeal. Friday morning, she went to work and tried to focus on a deck she was building for a packaged goods client who wanted their almond milk to feel aspirational. She sat in meetings. She ate a sad salad at her desk. Priya came by around 3 and leaned on the edge of her cubicle. You're doing the thing again. What thing? The thing where you stare at the wall and then jump when I talk to you. I'm fine. You are clearly not fine. Is this still about the wedding? Partly. Partly. Priya. Partly means there's a new thing. Lena Hart. What is the new thing? I have coffee with a guy tomorrow. Oh my God. Priya. From where? She hesitated. He's someone I met a long time ago. It's complicated. Complicated how? I don't want to get into it at work. I respect that, and I also want to get into it at work. Priya. Fine, fine. Tomorrow at lunch I want a full report. Fine. Full report, Lena. I said fine. On Friday night, Maren came over with Thai food and sat on Lena's floor and watched Lena try on 3 different outfits for a coffee date, as if either of them thought outfits were the issue. The gray sweater. You think? It makes you look like a person who has her life together. I don't have my life together. That's why you need the sweater. Lena stood in front of her full-length mirror in the gray sweater and a pair of jeans that had always been her favorite jeans. She looked like herself. Not the red dress version of herself. Not the version on the vacant chair. Herself. What if I don't like him? She said. Then you don't like him. What if I do like him? Then you like him. What if he's... Lena. What? You are going to a coffee shop on Marine Street in the daylight. You are not signing a contract. You are not marrying him. You are not moving to Europe. You are drinking a coffee with a man who gave you his phone number. If you do not like him, you will finish your coffee, say it was nice to see him, and leave. Do you understand? Yes? Okay. Maren. Yes. I'm scared. I know you are. Why am I scared? Because he already knows things about you. Yeah. Yeah. On Saturday morning, she woke up at 6, which was unforgivable because the coffee wasn't until 1, and 7 hours of awake. Time was a long time to stew. She made coffee. She read 2 chapters of a book that had nothing to do with Port Halden. She cleaned a bathroom that was already clean. She took a shower. She stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes and then put on the gray sweater, because Maren had been right. She did her makeup carefully and then removed half of it because she did not want to look like she had tried. She looked in the mirror and thought, I look like a person who has her life together, and then immediately thought, I don't, though, and then said out loud to her reflection, shut up. She got to the coffee place at 12:50. He was already there. She saw him through the front window as she walked up. He was sitting at a small corner table toward the back, not facing the door but with the door in his peripheral vision, the way a certain kind of careful man sits in restaurants. He was wearing a dark wool coat. He was reading something on his phone. There was a mug in front of him that he had not drunk from. She took a breath. She opened the door. The bell above it chimed. He looked up, saw her, set his phone face down on the table. He stood as she approached. Not fully, not theatrically, just enough. He waited until she was at the table before he sat down again. "Hi," she said. "Hi." They looked at each other. In the daylight, with a window behind him and no red dress, no whispers, no ballroom, he looked different than he had at the wedding. Younger, maybe, around the eyes. Tireder. The scar through his eyebrow was still there. He was not as tall when he was sitting. He was just a man. He was just a man in a wool coat in a coffee shop, and she did not know what to do with that. "You came," he said. "I said I would. I know, I still didn't believe it until you walked in. I almost didn't come," I figured. A waitress with a long braid came over. Lena ordered a latte because that was what she always ordered when she couldn't think. Adrian said he was fine with what he had. The waitress went away. "You haven't drunk your coffee," Lena said. "I ordered it for the table. I don't really drink coffee." "You don't drink coffee." "I drink tea." "Then why did you order—" "I didn't want to be the guy who sat at a coffee shop without ordering anything. I was trying to look normal. That is the least normal thing you could have done." He smiled, a small one, a real one. It did something to his face. "Noted." The latte came. Lena wrapped her hands around the mug. It was too hot to drink. She welcomed the burn. "Okay," she said. "Okay. I have questions." I figured. "A lot of them." "I'm ready." "I want to go in order." "Yes." The diner, Port Halden, 9 years ago. "Why were you there?" He was quiet for a second. He looked down at the table. "My father," he said, "had a boat in the harbor." "Your father?" "Yes." "The one who died?" "Yes. He had a boat in the Port Halden harbor. Small. Nothing fancy. He used it to go out by himself. That summer he was sick. He didn't know yet how sick, but he knew something was wrong. He asked me to come up for a week, help him clean the boat out, close it up for the season. I ended up staying longer than a week." "How long?" "A little over 2. 2 weeks?" "Yes." "Adrian." "Yes." "I was at that diner for 6 weeks that summer. You were there for part of 2. "I know." "You were there every night." "Yes." "Why?" He looked up at her. His eyes were very steady. "Because you were there," he said. She did not know what to do with her face. "I didn't—" He shook his head slightly. "I was 30 years old. I was out of my mind with my father. I was out of my mind with a number of things in my life at the time that are not important to this conversation, but I was not a happy man. I walked into that diner at 1:45 in the morning because I didn't want to go home to the boat. I ordered coffee. I ate a bad slice of pie. You came over and you asked me if I was all right, and I told you I was. And you said, no, you're not. And I laughed and I said, neither am I. You said, neither am I. Yes? I remember. So do I. I didn't know your father. No. I told you about my mother. Yes. For 2 weeks. Yes. For 2 weeks I came in at 1:45 and you came out of the kitchen and we talked for whatever time you had before you had to go back. And on some nights, when it was quiet, we talked for longer. I didn't ask you what was wrong. No. You never told me. No. Why didn't I ask? I don't know, Lena. Maybe because you were 20 and you had enough to carry. Maybe because I was 20 and I was selfish. Stop that. What? You are not going to sit across from me and rewrite a 20-year-old girl as selfish because she was losing her mother. I will not let you do that. She stared at him. He stared back. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. And the napkin. The napkin. The last night. You were leaving. Yeah. You told me you were going home the next morning. Yes. I wrote my number on a napkin. Yes. I didn't know what else to do, Lena. I wasn't going to kiss you. I wasn't going to... You were grieving. You were 20. I wasn't going to be that man. I wrote my number on a napkin and I slid it across the counter and I said something stupid. You said, if you ever want to yell at someone about life. He closed his eyes for just a second. You remember that? I remember that. I have thought about that line some, he said, approximately 400 times over the past 9 years, and every single time I have thought it was the stupidest line a human being has ever said to a woman. It wasn't the stupidest. It was pretty close. It was kind. It was not kind. It was all I could manage. It was kind, Adrian. That's why I kept the napkin. That's why I looked for the napkin. That's why I spent a year looking for that napkin. He didn't say anything. His hand on the table had tightened slightly around the handle of his mug. Why did you look for me? She said. I told you. Tell me again. In daylight. He took a breath. I went back to Port Halden, he said, the next summer, after my father died. I went to close up the boat for good and sell it. I went to Mosby's diner. It wasn't open yet when I got there. I waited. I sat on the curb for an hour. When Diane opened up, Diane, yes, Diane. When Diane opened up, I went in and I ordered coffee and I waited for a while and eventually I asked her. I asked her about the girl who had worked there the summer before. Dark hair. Tall. From out of state. She'd wash dishes and work the counter at night. What did Diane say? She said she didn't know your last name. She said she didn't have your address. She said you'd paid her in cash wages and left one morning before sunrise without giving her a forwarding anything. She said the only thing she remembered about you was that you were a nice kid who cried in the walk-in once, and you'd told her your mother was sick. Lena pressed her hand against her mouth. I didn't have anything, Adrian said. I didn't have your last name. I didn't have your town. I had nothing. You came back the next summer. I came back every summer for 4 years, Lena. I sat at Mosby's counter every summer for 4 years until I stopped expecting you and started expecting, I don't know, some kind of clue about you. Diane eventually started laughing at me when I walked in. She'd say, your girl didn't come back this year either, honey. She said it like I was a cat who kept bringing her dead mice. Adrian, I know. Adrian, I know it sounds insane. It sounds... I stopped after 4 years. I didn't stop thinking about you. I stopped going to the diner. I had built a business. I had a life. I couldn't keep driving 9 hours every summer to eat eggs at a counter and wait for a ghost. So 4 weeks ago, I had dinner with a man named Eli Rancourt. Do you know the name? No. He's one of my lawyers. Not a main one. A junior one. A specialist. He does certain kinds of contracts. We had dinner. He mentioned his girlfriend was nervous about a wedding that weekend. I asked what kind of wedding. He said a work friend was getting married, Marcus Dalton, you know, the guy who locked down a Blackwood. I said, that sounds unpleasant. He said, yeah, and apparently Dalton invited his ex to the wedding, which is a real move, and the ex is actually going. Lena's throat had gone tight. And, she said, and I said, what's the ex's name? And he said, Lena Hart. And I sat there at that restaurant, Lena, I sat there in my chair, and I said the name back to him. Lena Hart. And I thought, it's not her, it's just a name. It's just a first name I've been saying to myself for 9 years and another word at the end of it. It's not her. And I finished the dinner and I went home and I sat in my apartment and I could not stop thinking about it. The last name was new to you. The last name was new to me. And then I had a private investigator. He paused. I'm going to tell you this even though it's going to make you angry. I had a private investigator pull some very basic information to see if you were the right age. Date of birth, hometown, that was all. No photographs, no surveillance, just enough information to know whether the Lena Hart going to Marcus Dalton's wedding was a woman who had been 20 years old in Port Halden 9 summers ago. And you were. So you went. So I went. And you came into that ballroom, and I came into that ballroom to see if I was her. To see if you were her. And when you saw me, I knew. How? I don't know. How, Adrian? I don't know, Lena. I don't know. I saw you at the table. I saw your face. I saw the way you were sitting in that chair. I saw your hands in your lap. I just knew. It wasn't your features. It wasn't even that I recognized you exactly.
Your face has changed. You're not 20. I looked at you and I thought, there she is. That's all I can tell you. There she is.
The coffee shop was quiet. Somewhere a grinder started up. Lena could feel the vibration of it in her spine. She was crying a little and she had not noticed when she had started, but the waitress with the braid passed by the table and did not stop, and Lena was grateful to her for it. She wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist. Adrian? Yes. I want you to answer me one more thing, and then we are going to drink the rest of this coffee and talk about something normal for a little while. Yes. The people at that wedding who were afraid of you. Yes. Were they right to be afraid? He looked at her. He looked at her for a long moment. Yes, he said. Her breath came out slow. Okay. I told you I wasn't a good man in the way you would want a good man to be good. You did. I'm not going to pretend that my business is clean. It's not. I'm not going to pretend I haven't hurt people. I have. Criminally. I have not been charged with a crime. That's not what I asked. I know. Adrian, I'm not going to answer that question across this table in daylight on the first coffee. I will answer anything else. I will answer that question eventually. But not here. Not at a cafe on Moran Street with a waitress behind you. You're asking me to tell you whether I am the kind of man a reasonable woman should run from, and the honest answer to that is complicated, and this is not the place for complicated. She swallowed. Okay. Okay. I accept that. Thank you. Adrian. Yes. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't either. You said that at the hallway, at the wedding. You said you didn't know yet. I still don't. I'm not going to fall in love with you over a coffee. I don't expect you to. I don't even know if I want to see you a second time. That's fair. I might get home tonight and decide this was a bad idea. Also fair. I don't... She stopped. She took a breath. I don't want to be a story you tell. He blinked. A story I don't want to be... I don't want to be the woman you spent 9 years looking for, Adrian. I don't want to be... That sounds beautiful, and it's not. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of... I can't be the answer to a 9-year question. I'm just me. I'm a person. I'm a marketing person who lives in a small apartment and has a water stain on her ceiling shaped like a boot. I'm not a resolution. No, he said quietly. You're not. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes. Do you? Lena, if I wanted a resolution, I would have let you keep being a ghost. A ghost is a very convenient thing. A ghost doesn't have a water stain. She laughed involuntarily. Her nose was running. She grabbed a napkin from the little holder on the table and blew it loudly enough that the man at the next table glanced over. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. I keep apologizing. Stop. Okay. The latte was finally cool enough to drink. She drank some of it. It was a good latte. She focused on that for a second. The taste of it, and the warmth of the mug between her hands, and the fact that she was in a coffee shop on a Saturday afternoon and she had not died at Marcus Dalton's wedding. Normal thing, she said. Normal thing. You said we would talk about something normal for a little while. After. Yes. What do you... She waved her hand. What do you do? On a Saturday, when you're not meeting women in coffee shops. What does your Saturday look like? He considered it. He looked almost embarrassed. I read. You read? Yes. You read in the library with the ladder? Yes. You sit there and read? I do. All day. If I can. What are you reading right now? A biography of a woman who ran a ranch in Wyoming in the 1890s. That is unexpected. I go in phases. Adrian Volkov reads cowgirl biographies. She wasn't a cowgirl, she was a... Shut up. Let me have this. Okay? I have a picture in my head of you now, in your library, with a ladder, reading a cowgirl biography, drinking tea. It's reasonably accurate. Good. She drank more of her latte. The coffee shop got a little busier behind her. Someone came in with a dog. The bell over the door chimed and chimed again. Lena sat across from Adrian Volkov and they talked for another 40 minutes about nothing in particular. The books he'd been reading, the shows she'd been watching, the apartment Marin had moved into 3 years ago with the broken elevator. He asked about her work. She asked about his, vaguely, and he answered vaguely, and she accepted the vagueness for what it was. Neither of them brought up Marcus, or the ballroom, or the napkin, or Port Halden, or the diner, or the fact that they had spent 9 years on opposite sides of a lost napkin. It was a coffee. It was, she realized somewhere in the middle of it, a good coffee. When she finally looked at her phone, it was almost 3 o'clock. She had been there for 2 hours. I should go. Okay. I have to. I have things. I know. Adrian? Yes. I'll call you. Okay. I don't know when. I know. It might be a while. I'll wait. Don't send me anything. I won't. Don't come to my apartment. I won't. I mean it. I know you mean it. I won't. She stood up. He stood up. She put her coat back on. She picked up her bag. At the door of the coffee shop, she turned back. He was still standing at the table. He hadn't moved. She lifted her hand. A small wave. A nothing wave. He lifted his back. She walked out into the Saturday afternoon, and the door chimed behind her, and the cold October air hit her face, and she walked all the way home instead of taking the train, and when she got to her apartment, she sat on the couch for a long time without turning on a single light, thinking about a man who had a ladder in his library and had not tried once, over 2 hours, to touch her hand across the table. Part 5. Lưu ý. Viết 5.000 đến 5.500 từ, không viết quá sổ từ yêu cầu. Liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện, pha hồi thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mọi phần liền mạch với phần trước, không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch, sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề, tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ, phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ, Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc. Kể theo ngôi thứ 3, giữ đồ kịch tính không viết lan man, có quan điểm cá nhân, thông điệp, bài học, góc nhìn con người. Nhân vật không hoàn hảo, hội thoại tự nhiên, tránh ngôn ngữ văn chương sáo rơi và cụm từ AI điển hình. Viết như nhà văn chuyên nghiệp, không như AI cố gắng nghe sang. Có yếu tố con người, cầm miêu tả qua mượt mà và hoàn hảo. Phần 5 giải quyết hết vấn đề và kết thúc trọn vẹn câu chuyện. Lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn không nhảy sang document, chỉ dần bắt buộc. Không được xuất hiện trong nội dung truyền. Đây là một câu chuyện điện ảnh hoàn toàn hư cấu được tạo ra chỉ nhằm mục đích giải trí, không đề cập hay ngụ ý rằng nó dựa trên sự kiện có thật, người thật hoặc câu chuyện có thật, không sử dụng các cụm từ như dựa trên một câu chuyện có thật, theo ghi chép hoặc bất cứ điều gì tương tự. Tất cả các nhân vật, địa điểm, tổ chức và sự kiện phải hoàn toàn hư cấu. Show more 10:02. She didn't call him for 11 days. It wasn't strategy. She wasn't playing anything. It was that she got home from the coffee and sat on the couch in the dark and understood, in a slow, clear way, that the next move was hers, and nobody could make it for her. Not Marin, not Priya, not Adrian himself. And that particular kind of understanding makes a person very slow. She needed the 11 days. She did not apologize for them. What she did in those 11 days was small. She went to work. She finished the almond milk deck and presented it badly in a meeting, and nobody noticed because nobody was paying attention. She met Priya for lunch and told her the coffee had gone fine, which was true. She didn't tell her anything else, which was also true. She called her mother's sister, her Aunt Jo, who she hadn't called in 6 months, and listened to her aunt complain about a new neighbor for almost an hour, and did not once change the subject, because she understood halfway through the call that she had been avoiding her aunt because her aunt sounded like her mother. She cried a little after she hung up. Then she did her dishes. She thought about Adrian in pieces, not big pieces, small ones. The scar through his eyebrow, the way he had stood up when she walked into the coffee shop. Not all the way, just enough. The way he had said, "There she is." The way he had said when she had asked him whether the people at that wedding were right to be afraid of him, yes. She thought about that yes a lot. She did not know what to do with that yes. On the 6th day, she dug out the red dress from the back of her closet and looked at it for a long time. It was a fine dress. It was still a fine dress. She held it up against her body and looked at herself in the mirror, and then she folded it very carefully and put it in a donation bag and set the bag by her front door. She didn't throw it out. She wasn't going to be that dramatic. But she wasn't going to wear it again either. Some dresses were for one night. On the 8th day, she ran into Elise Marchetti in a grocery store. It was the kind of ambush only a grocery store could produce. Elise was looking at cheeses. Lena rounded the end of the aisle with a cart full of pasta and dish soap, and they made eye contact over a wheel of brie, and there was a half second when both of them considered pretending they hadn't seen each other and then agreed, telepathically, that it was too late. Lena. Elise. Elise's eyes flicked down to Lena's cart, up to her face, down again. She was in workout clothes and a long coat. Her hair was in a ponytail. She looked, Lena thought, tired in a way Lena hadn't noticed at the wedding. "How are you?" Elise said, with great care. "I'm okay. I heard. I'm sure you did." Lena. "Elise, it's fine. I don't need the post-wedding debrief, really." Elise hesitated. She glanced down at the cheese in her hand as if it had asked her something. She put it back. "It wasn't a good wedding," she said quietly. Lena didn't answer. "I don't mean because of you." Elise gave a small, tight laugh. "I mean, it genuinely wasn't good. It was a bad night, Lena. I don't think Marcus and Celeste are... I don't know. It's not my business. I don't think it's going to last." Elise. "Yes. I'm sorry you had to find out at your friend's wedding, but that is genuinely not my problem." Elise blinked. "That's fair," she said after a second. "Take care of yourself." "You too." They did not say anything else. Lena pushed her cart past Elise and onto the frozen aisle, and by the time she got to the checkout, she had forgotten to buy dish soap, which was the thing she had gone in for. She went home anyway. There was half a bottle of dish soap under her sink. There always was. On the 9th day, Marin called and asked her, without preamble, if she was ever going to call him. "I don't know." "Lena." "I said I don't know." "You've said I don't know for 9 days, sweetheart." "It's been 9 days?" "It has been 9 days." "Huh." "Lena." "Yeah?" "If you don't want to call him, don't call him. That's a real answer. I'm going to tell you that. If you don't want him, don't have him. You are a whole person. You had a whole life before he walked into that ballroom. You do not owe a man with a ladder in his library any explanation of your time. I mean that. Okay?" "Okay, but I don't think that's what's happening with you." "Isn't it?" "I think you're scared." "Yeah." "Of what?" Lena was quiet for a long time. She was standing at her kitchen window. The streetlight across the way had finally been fixed the day before. It was on again, steady, bright. She had not realized how much it had changed her apartment to have that light working until it worked. "I'm scared," she said finally, "that if I call him, I don't get to blame Marcus anymore." Marin was quiet. "Explain that," she said. "If I don't call him, I'm a woman who got dumped by a man who married a Blackwood, and that is a very specific story, and it is a very useful story. I know how to be a woman in that story. I know how to be sad about it at work. I know how to explain it at dinner parties. I know how to..." Her throat tightened. "I know how to be broken, Marin. I have been good at being broken for almost 2 years. If I call him and it works, then I'm just a person with a life. And I have to figure out how to be a person with a life again. And I don't remember how." "Oh, babe. It sounds stupid. It doesn't sound stupid. It sounds stupid when I say it out loud." "It doesn't, Lena. It's the truest thing you've ever said to me." "Is it?" "Yes." "Okay. Okay." "Marin." "Yes." "I'm going to call him." "Good." "But not tonight." "Okay." "Tomorrow." "Okay." "If I don't, tell me to." "I will." "Okay." She called him on the 11th day. It was a Tuesday evening, a little after 7. She was sitting on her couch with her feet tucked up under her, in sweatpants, with no makeup on, with her hair in a clip. She had not dressed for the phone call. She had decided pointedly not to dress for it. This was a thing she was going to do as she was, or she wasn't going to do it at all. He picked up on the second ring. "Lena." "Hi." "Hi. I'm not calling for anything." "Okay. I told you I would call eventually. I didn't want you to think I wasn't going to." "I didn't think that."
You didn't. No. How did you know? I didn't know. I was hoping. Oh. Silence. It wasn't awkward. It was... She tried to think of the word. It was just silence. It was the sound of two adults on a phone line deciding what they wanted to say next and not rushing it. I've been thinking, she said. Yes. About the thing you wouldn't answer. At the cafe? Yes. Yes. I want to know, Adrian. Okay? Not all of it. I don't think I can sit in a room and have you list everything bad thing you've ever done. I don't want that. I'm not going to pretend I want that, but I want enough to know what I'm choosing. Okay. Can you tell me enough? Yes. Now. Now. Over the phone. If that's what you want.
I don't want to be across from you when you tell me, Adrian. I don't want your face to do anything. I want to hear it with my eyes closed. Okay? Go. He took a breath. She closed her eyes on the couch. My family, he said, came to this country in the early 1970s. My grandfather first, then my grandmother, then my father and his brothers. They came from a place that was, it doesn't matter what place. They came with very little. My grandfather was a smart man and a hard man, and he built over time a series of businesses. Some of them were legal, some of them were not. The ones that were not are not things I want to describe over the phone to a woman I am trying to be honest with. The short version is that the money that paid for my education, and the money that started my career, and the money that still quietly props up several of my so-called legal ventures was not clean money. I want to be clear about that. I have never in my life built something on clean money. Mama, molto me sacie. She didn't say anything. My father did not want me in the old businesses. He was the oldest of my grandfather's sons, and he spent his entire life negotiating with his father about which pieces of our family's interests I would inherit and which I would not. When he died, I inherited a position. More than a company, a position. I have other people who run the parts I don't want to run. I don't touch them. I don't make decisions about them. The men who run them know that I know they exist, and they know that I will not interfere with them, and they know that I will not leave the family either, because the family is the reason I have anything at all. So I run the clean side, the investment firm, Volkov Holdings, real estate, a few funds, some legitimate property. I am a very successful investor on paper. I am also, in the ways that matter, connected to men who do things I would not do myself. I have benefited from those things. I will not pretend I have not. Men are afraid of me because the name is the name. They are not afraid of me personally because of anything I have personally done. Adrian. Yes. Have you personally done anything? I have hurt people financially. I have taken things from people who did not want to give them up. I have used leverage that was... He paused. Inherited. I have not hurt anyone physically. I have not ordered anyone to. I will not pretend I am above it, Lena, because I am not. I am part of a structure that is above it, and I eat off that structure, but I have not personally, with my own hands or my own voice, hurt anyone that way. That's the answer. I don't know if it's good enough. And you're not going to leave the family. No. Can you? Not cleanly. Not without a lot of people being very upset. So no. So no. She breathed out slowly. Okay, she said. Okay? I'm not saying okay like yes. I'm saying okay like thank you for telling me. All right. I need to think. All right. I'm going to hang up and I'm going to think. Yes. Adrian. Yes. You didn't soften any of that. No. Why? Because if you are going to decide against me, I would rather you decide against me for the right reasons than for reasons I made up to make myself sound better. If you're going to choose not to be around me, I want it to be you choosing, with accurate information. I don't want to win you with a lie. I tried that once, with somebody else a long time ago. I didn't like myself afterward. Okay. Okay. Good night, Adrian. Good night, Lena. She hung up. She sat on the couch in the dark for a very long time. It was, she realized later,
the most honest conversation she had ever had with a man in her life. Marcus had never, in 4 years, told her one true difficult thing about himself. Marcus had cried during a movie once about a dog, and Lena had believed for a long time that that was him being vulnerable, because she had been young, and because he had been handsome, and because she had wanted to believe it. Adrian had told her he came from money that had hurt people, and had done it on a phone call at 7 in the evening without asking her to feel sorry for him about it. That was not the same thing as being a good man. She understood that. A person who was honest about being bad was still being bad. Honesty was not absolution, but it was something. She thought about it all night. In the morning before work, she called her Aunt Jo again. She didn't mean to. She just dialed the number. Lena? Hi, Aunt Jo. Is everything okay? You don't usually call in the morning. Everything's fine. I wanted to ask you something about Mom.
Oh, her aunt's voice softened. Okay. Was she scared when she was dying?
There was a long pause. Honey, I know it's a big question. I don't know if I ever asked you back then. You didn't. Was she? Yes, her aunt said. She was. At the end, a lot. She tried to hide it from you, but she was. She told me she was. She told me everything in those last weeks. What did she tell you? Her aunt was quiet. She told me she was scared you wouldn't know how to be happy, she said. She told me she was scared you'd pick the wrong people because you felt sorry for them, because that was your pattern, even then. She said, Joe, my girl picks men like she picks strays, and she's going to end up alone with the wrong one because she thinks being the one who stays is the same as being loved. Lena pressed her hand against her mouth. Lena? I'm here. I didn't mean to. No. Thank you. Thank you, Aunt Jo. She loved you so much, honey. I know. She would have wanted me to say the other part, too. What other part? She said if I ever saw you with a man who looked at you like he was scared of losing you, I was to like him. She said most of them weren't scared enough. Lena laughed. It came out broken. That sounds like her. It's exactly like her. Aunt Jo. Yeah. I love you. I love you too, Lena. She went to work. She sat at her desk. She answered her emails. At lunch, she took her sandwich to the little park across from the office and sat on a bench in the cold and watched an old man throw bread to pigeons. And she thought about her mother. And she thought about Marcus. And she thought about the vacant card on the table. And she thought about a man with a ladder in his library who had told her, last night on the phone, the worst things about himself without trying to make them sound like anything other than what they were. She went back to her desk. She worked the afternoon. At 5 o'clock, she went home, and she sat on her couch and she called him. Lena. Adrian. I want to see you again. Okay. Not coffee. Okay. Dinner. Okay. Saturday. Yes. Somewhere quiet. I'll find somewhere quiet. Adrian? Yes? I'm not deciding anything long. I want to be clear. I am not agreeing to anything. I am agreeing to dinner on Saturday. That is all I am agreeing to. I know. I don't know what I'm doing. You said. I keep saying. I know. I'm going to keep saying. I'll keep understanding. Okay? Okay. She didn't hang up right away. Neither did he. They sat on the phone breathing for maybe 15 seconds, a long time, in phone silence math. And neither of them said anything, and neither of them had to. Saturday, she said. Saturday. She hung up. The dinner happened. It was at a small restaurant in a part of the city she had never been to, in the back booth, with low lamps on every table and a waiter who was so discreet he almost wasn't there. Adrian had chosen well. Not impressive. Not expensive in a way that announced itself. Quiet. A place you could talk in. She wore a blue dress, not red. She did her hair down. She drank 1 glass of wine and no more. They talked about her work, which she was considering leaving. They talked about his father, a little, for the first time. The boat in Port Halden, the summer he had been dying, the fight they had had on the phone 2 weeks before he died that Adrian still couldn't finish thinking about. They talked about Maren,
They talked about a woman named Irina, who Adrian had dated in his 20s, who had died, which Lena had not been expecting. She sat very quietly while he told her that, and when he was done, she reached across the table and put her hand over his for the first time and left it there for about 10 seconds, and then took it back. He walked her to the corner. He didn't walk her to her door. She didn't ask him to. At the corner he stopped, and he looked at her in the streetlight, and he said, "Thank you for the night." "You're welcome." "Good night, Lena." "Good night." He did not kiss her. She went home. She thought about that for a week. He did not kiss her. He had kissed her at the wedding, in front of Marcus Dalton and Celeste Blackwood, and 300 people, and she had thought at the time that the kiss was about her, and now she understood it was not. Not really. That kiss had been about Marcus. This, the not kiss, on a corner, in a streetlight, at a restaurant where nobody was watching, this was about her. This was the difference. She was learning, she thought, slowly. She saw him again 3 weeks later, and 3 weeks after that, and then once a week for a while, then twice a week. He did not push. He did not send flowers. He did not show up places. He did exactly what she asked him to do every single time, and he answered every question she put to him. And on a Saturday in January, when they had been seeing each other for nearly 3 months without having slept together, she sat on the floor of his library. Yes, there was a ladder, and she looked up at the shelves around her and said, "Tell me which ones were your father's." And he showed her. In February, Marcus Dalton's mother called Lena. Out of nowhere. Out of absolutely nowhere. A Wednesday afternoon. Lena was at her desk. The number came up unknown. "Hello? Lena, it's Patricia Dalton." Lena had to sit down. She was already sitting. She sat down harder. "Patricia, hi. I'll be quick. I'm not calling for anything strange. I wanted to tell you something, and I couldn't let another week go by without saying it." "Okay. Marcus and Celeste are separating." "Oh. I know you don't need to know. I know it's not your problem. I wanted you to hear it from me, and not from gossip. You were with my son for a long time. I always liked you, Lena. I don't think I told you that enough when you were together. I'm telling you now." "Thank you, Patricia." "I heard—" She paused. "I heard you're seeing someone." "Yes. I heard it's the Volkov boy." "He's not a boy, Patricia." No, of course not. I know what you meant. Be careful, Lena." "I am being careful. I mean it. I know you do. I am." There was a long silence. "Take care of yourself," Patricia said. "You too." "Lena." "Yes? I'm sorry for what he did at the wedding with the seating." "Oh, he's my son. I'm not supposed to say this. I'm saying it anyway. He shouldn't have done that. It was beneath him. She stopped. "He's not always a good person, my son. I know that about him. I should have told you that years ago." "Patricia." "Yes." "Thank you. Goodbye, Lena." Goodbye. Lena sat at her desk for a long time after that. She was not, she realized, happy about the separation. She was not gleeful. She had thought for a long time that the day she heard about Marcus's marriage ending would be a day she lit a candle or poured a drink or laughed about it with Marin. Instead, she just felt a small, tired kind of sadness for him and for Celeste. The way you feel sad about people you used to know who are going to have a hard year. She went home. She told Marin on the phone that evening. Marin said, "Well, that's a Wednesday," which was maybe the best thing Marin had ever said in her life. Lena did not tell Adrian that night, not because she was hiding it from him, because it didn't belong to him. She thought about that. She was learning that too. There were some things that were hers, and some things that were his, and some things that were theirs, and she was getting better at telling the difference. She told him a week later in passing over breakfast at her apartment. He was reading the paper. She said, "Marcus and Celeste are separating." He looked up. He waited. He said, "How do you feel about that?" "Tired." "Okay. That's all?" "Okay." He went back to the paper. That was love, she thought, though she didn't say it out loud. In April, Lena quit her job. She did not have another job. She did not have a plan. She had some savings. She had a landlord who would probably not evict her if she was 2 weeks late on rent, once, if she explained. She had a best friend with a couch that folded out. And she was starting to admit to herself, the first real clarity she had had about her own life in years. She wanted to do something with writing. She had always wanted to do something with writing. She had, at 20, had a notebook full of drafts of short stories she had never shown anyone. She had, at 29, the beginning of a sense that if she did not try now, she was going to wake up at 40 and not have tried. She did not ask Adrian to help her with it. He did not offer. He said, when she told him, "What do you want to write first?" "I don't know. Something about a woman who works in a diner?" "Is that autobiography?" "It's loosely." "I'd read it." "You have to. You're sleeping with me now." "I'd read it anyway." "Yeah, I know you would." She sat at the little white desk in her bedroom with the burn mark on the corner, and she wrote. She wrote badly at first, the way everyone writes badly at first, and she crossed a lot of it out, and she rewrote it, and she started over twice. But she wrote. She wrote most days. By June, she had 30 pages she didn't hate. By September, she had 100. She didn't move in with him. He asked once, carefully, the way he asked everything, whether she had thought about it. She said yes, but no. He nodded. He didn't ask again. It was enough for him that she had thought about it. He understood, better than most men Lena had known, that yes but no was an answer. They had between the two of them an agreement she could not quite put into words, except privately in her own head. They were not going to rush into anything, and they were not going to pretend not to be in it. They were adults. They had both lost a lot before they ever met each other. They were not going to build a life in 6 months to prove they had built one. They were going to build a life the way a careful person builds a life, which is slowly and with a lot of breaks for coffee, and with the acknowledgement that it might fall over and they might have to start again. One night in late October, almost exactly a year after the wedding, she was sitting on her couch in his sweater. He had left a sweater there 2 weeks before, and she had kept it. And he was on the floor in front of her, his back against the couch, drinking tea. He was rereading the cowgirl biography for the second time, apparently. The TV was on with the sound off. Some movie neither of them was watching. She said, "Adrian?" "Yes, I want to tell you something, and I need you to not make a big deal about it." "Okay." "I love you." He was quiet for a second. "I love you too," he said. "I've been waiting to say that for a while." "I know. Why now?" "I don't know. I just looked at you and it felt like the right thing to say." "Okay." "Okay?" "Yes. Okay. I'm not going to make a big deal about it. You asked me not to. Thank you. But I'm happy. Good. Very happy." "Me too." He went back to the book. She put her hand on his shoulder. She left it there. He didn't move. They sat like that, the two of them, for maybe 20 minutes. A man on the floor rereading a biography of a woman who ran a ranch in Wyoming, and a woman on the couch in a sweater that wasn't hers, with her hand on his shoulder, while a silent movie played on a TV nobody was watching. That was, Lena thought later, the quietest moment of her life. It was also the moment she understood the whole thing. She thought about it, sometimes, after. The wedding, the red dress, the vacant card on the table, the walk across the ballroom, the patio with Celeste, the patio with Marcus, the whiskey, the lobby, the napkin she had lost at 20, the book that had come in brown paper wrapping, the cafe on Marine Street, the phone call where he told her what his family was, the corner where he hadn't kissed her, the library with the ladder. And she thought, on a night in October, a full year after it all, that the lesson wasn't any of what she'd expected. The lesson wasn't that a dangerous man had saved her from a humiliating night. He hadn't saved her. She had walked out of that ballroom under her own power and told Marcus Dalton to his face that he didn't get to ask her for promises anymore. That was her. That was not Adrian. Adrian had held the door. Lena had walked through it. The lesson wasn't that life gave you what you wanted if you waited long enough. Life didn't give her her mother back. Life didn't undo the 4 years she'd spent with Marcus. Life didn't erase the damage of sitting at a vacant table in a red dress. Life hadn't given her anything. It had let her live long enough to get to the other side of it, which was a different thing. The lesson, if there was one, was smaller than either of those. It was this. Some of the people we love leave us. Some of the people we love marry someone else and seat us at the wrong table to prove a point. Some of the people we love die. And some of the people we love find us in a diner when we are 20, lose us in a napkin, and come back 9 years later and sit across a coffee table and tell us honestly who they are. And the only work we have, really, is to learn the difference between the people who keep us small and the people who ask us, gently, to be as big as we actually are. Lena Hart had spent 29 years being made smaller. And then a man she didn't remember had walked across a ballroom and offered her a different story. And she had, not without trouble, not without fear, not without sitting on a kitchen floor in a robe for one whole night, said yes. That was all of it. That was the whole thing. On the first anniversary of Marcus Dalton's wedding, Lena Hart was in a small rented cabin on the coast of Maine with Adrian Volkov, 2 hours south of Port Halden. She was 3 months into a first draft of a novel about a diner. He was reading a book about the shipping trade in Baltimore in the 1950s, which she had teased him mercilessly about. They had driven up on a Friday and planned to drive back on a Monday. On the Saturday evening, they walked down to the water with a thermos of coffee between them. The October light on the water was soft and gold. The wind was cold. She wore his sweater. She had brought the sweater with her. She wore it almost every day now, and he had stopped noticing. They sat on a bench at the end of a short wooden pier. The coffee was too hot for a while, and then it was right, and then it was cold. Adrian. Yes. I want to go up to Port Halden tomorrow. He looked at her. Okay, he said. I want to go to the diner. Okay. I want to see if Diane's still there. She is. How do you know? I called last week. Adrian? I didn't tell her we were coming. I called about something else. She mentioned she was working Sundays now. You called about something else. I wanted to know if the diner was still open. I didn't want to drive you up there and find it was closed. That would have been... Adrian, yes. I love you. I love you too. Let's go tomorrow. Okay. They sat on the pier until the sun went down. They drank the coffee. They didn't say very much. Lena put her head on his shoulder, eventually, and he put his arm around her without any of the performance of a man who had been waiting to do it. And they sat like that while the water went from gold to gray to black, and a single boat in the middle distance bobbed at anchor. She thought, in the quiet way you think about things when you are warm and have stopped fighting, that her mother had been right. She had always picked men like she picked strays. She had always thought being the one who stayed was the same as being loved. It wasn't. It never had been. Being loved, it turned out, was being able to stand up from a table labeled vacant in a red dress and walk out of a ballroom under your own power and take 11 days to call a man back and ask him over the phone, in the dark, with your eyes closed, to tell you the worst thing about himself, and have him tell you, without softening it, and still want to sit with you on a pier in October a year later. Being loved was the pier. Lena Hart sat on the pier with Adrian Volkov, and the water turned black, and she did not cry, and she was not scared, and she was not breaking. She was, for the first time in a very long time, simply there, which it had taken her 29 years to understand was the whole point.